This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Israeli settlements were the main topic of discussion during the meeting between U.S. envoy to the Middle East George Mitchell and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem today. Mitchell, who prepared a proposal for stopping the construction of settlements in the West Bank, agreed to meet with Netanyahu again tomorrow in pursuit of complete peace in the region. However, the Prime Minister of Israel reiterated yesterday his rejection of freezing all the settlements in the West Bank, emphasizing that decreasing the construction of settlements will only occur for a limited period of time. He has not yet come to an agreement with the Americans about the length of that period. George Mitchell's visit in pursuit of peace to the occupied Palestinian lands continues, though there are some changes in the schedule. The envoy will present the U.S.'s proposals, which may lead to resuming negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians. This political scene has some new developments that are different from the history of the Palestinian struggle. For 16 years, the Oslo agreements have been nothing but ink on paper. But today, Palestinians fear that a new agreement may drive the Palestinians once again back into useless negotiations and interim agreements. Sharouk Assad reports from occupied Jerusalem.
The visit of the U.S. envoy to the Middle East certainly coincides with the anniversary of the Oslo agreements. However, this coincidence cannot obscure the similarity between today's political scene and that of yesterday. Indeed, faces have changed, but the actions have not. Israel continues to renege on past agreements and impose new realities on the ground. Now it wants an interim agreement that includes a Palestinian state, while postponing final resolutions on the issues of Jerusalem and refugees. The U.S. envoys have changed in the past 16 years, but this one, like the others, makes many trips to the region and talks a lot while doing very little.
The Oslo agreements did not succeed because of many mistakes made by political officials. These mistakes are still being repeated, and the Americans still have the same problem, which is refraining from exerting any kind of pressure on Israel.
However, there are two major differences between the past and the present. First, the Palestinian National Authority says that it will not fall into the trap of useless negotiations and interim agreements.
There is reconstruction and there is also internal pressure. The Palestinian people are aware of what's happening, and they are exerting pressure. If we enter into political negotiations, then they must be based on clear foundations and demands, and we must hold Israel to them.
The second difference is that the Palestinian leadership, which signed the Oslo agreements while it was abroad, is now inside the Palestinian territory. It competes over power with another leadership in Gaza, the Hamas movement. The Palestinian Authority, which was the product of the Oslo agreements, is now headquartered in Ramallah. It says that it has learned from past mistakes. The Palestinian people and political observers hope that the Palestinian Authority will be able to stand the tremendous pressure, which puts it in a similar position to that of 16 years ago. Sharouk Assad, Dubai TV, from the headquarters of Ramallah.
Israel and the United States failed to reach a compromise today on the contentious issue of West Bank settlement construction. But U.S. Middle East envoy George Mitchell isn't giving up just yet. IBA's Eli Wargelenter has that story.
It is still unclear whether U.S. Middle East envoy George Mitchell will succeed in bridging the gaps between the two sides, but there's no denying his efforts. Mitchell met today with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a meeting described by the Prime Minister's office as good. At the start of the meeting, Netanyahu welcomed Mitchell, and the U.S. envoy said he hopes his country and Israel could reach a compromise on Jewish settlement construction in the West Bank.
Thank you. It's very good to see Senator Mitchell again. We are practiced hands, and we extend our hands to the United States and to the Palestinians in the quest for advancing peace, prosperity, and security in our region. So I welcome you, George, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. I, too, look forward to our discussions. We appreciate your courtesy in seeing us here, and we hope to bring this phase of our discussions to an early conclusion and to move forward in our common search for comprehensive peace in the region.
No agreement on a settlement freeze was announced following their 2-hour meeting. The American envoy then traveled to Ramallah to hold talks with Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas in a further effort to hold a meeting between Abbas, Netanyahu, and U.S. President Barack Obama at the upcoming UN General Assembly next week. The Palestinians have vowed not to return to the negotiating table until Israel completely halts its settlement activities, a position at odds with Netanyahu's. Another meeting between Mitchell and Netanyahu is scheduled for tomorrow morning.
President Shimon Peres, who met yesterday with George Mitchell, is deeply involved in the attempts to restart the peace talks. The president today hosted the entire diplomatic corps serving in Israel for the traditional Rosh Hashanah reception at the presidential residence in Jerusalem. According to media reports, Peres met secretly with PA negotiator Saeb Erekat in Jerusalem last week in an effort to persuade PA President Mahmoud Abbas to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu together with U.S. President Barack Obama in New York next week. This is what the president had to say today to the diplomats on that subject.
I believe that the President of the United States would like to make a major statement in the Assembly, which we support full-heartedly.
The United Nations report says Israel has committed war crimes during its offensive against Gaza. The fact-finding rights mission report says Israel used disproportionate force and failed to take precautions to minimize loss of civilian lives. It also cited strong evidence that Israeli forces committed grave breaches of the Geneva Convention. The firing of white phosphorus shells and the use of high explosive artillery shells were listed as violations of humanitarian law. Israel has dismissed the report and said the mandate is one-sided. This is while the report has also accused of some Palestinian groups in Gaza of possible war crimes. Israel's 22-day offensive against Gaza claimed the lives of around 1,400 Palestinians, mostly women and children. Well, our correspondent in Gaza told us more about the reactions to the United Nations fact-finding report. Let's take a listen.
A lot of people in Gaza, especially the leaders of Palestinian factions, are upset because of this report that also accused the Palestinian fighters of committing war crimes by firing rockets. What really happened is Israel attacked the Gaza Strip with full force, with F-16 fighter jets, Apache helicopters, tanks, and ground troops, killed at least 1,500 people during 22 days, while Palestinian fighters fired a number of rockets into Israel to protect the civilian population of Gaza. And now this report comes out. People here are pessimistic about this, despite the accusations against Israel, because throughout history, Israel has been reprimanded or accused of doing things, but never been brought to justice, and the Palestinians never been compensated to the evil that has been perpetrated against them. That's why the people in Gaza are not that happy about it.
The Lebanese opposition unanimously refrained from naming any new prime minister. Even the Development and Liberation Party, headed by Speaker Nabi Berri, refrained from naming Saad al-Hariri as the prime minister like they did in previous times. However, the heads of opposing political parties took turns in reiterating that they will support any new prime minister despite their refusal to nominate anyone. Meanwhile, Lebanese President Michel Suleiman started consulting with parliament members as part of his efforts to find a new prime minister to form the new government after parliament member Saad al-Hariri stepped down from the position of forming the government. Joining me from Beirut, Rashid Faid, the media spokesman for the Future Party. Mr. Rashid, what are your comments regarding the fact that all opposition parties have unanimously refrained from renominating Saad al-Hariri?
This position illustrates the opposition's support for General Aoun's agenda. Aoun said that he will not support any government if his brother-in-law does not become the Minister of Communications. This shows that some parties in Lebanon are trying to escalate the situation, because refraining from renominating Hariri shows that they do not support him. It was expected that Hariri would be renominated because he was originally nominated by the majority. How can he form a government that includes ministers who do not give him a vote of confidence and do not even support his ability to form the government? This shows that they are trying to create confrontation. However, I believe that Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri is trying to find a way out of this situation by forming a technocratic government like some people have been saying. Forming a political government, as some have proposed in the past, means that the opposition must be included, although this opposition does not support the nomination of Saad al-Hariri. There is a contradiction in the political situation in Lebanon because the minority is trying to impose their conditions on how the government can be formed and yet refuses to support the nomination of Hariri. And they also want to participate in this government according to their conditions. Prime Minister Hariri was generous when he proposed the last government, in which he gave the minority opposition 9 influential ministerial positions, some in the service sector. In contrast, the majority got only 9 ministerial positions. Parliamentary seats are not divided this way.
But what about the executive ministerial positions?
No. The executive ministerial positions are being used to foil attempts to form a national unity government. There are 4 executive ministries. The foreign ministry is often decided upon by the opposition parties, namely the Amal party. The interior and defense ministries are usually appointed by the president, as was agreed upon in the past. The Ministry of Finance is extremely important for economic development, which is what Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri is trying to achieve. So, when Michel Aoun demands that he acquire one of the executive ministries, he, in effect, is trying to create a confrontation with the president's office, or he wants to deny the ruling majority, which is the Future Party, its right to appoint the financial ministry.
Today is a new dawn in Iraq. Authorities released journalist Muntadhar al-Zaidi this morning after 9 months of imprisonment.
Al-Zaidi reiterated that throwing his shoes at Bush was an expression of his rejection of the occupation forces killing his people.
For every innocent life that has been taken as a consequence of the occupation, for every scream of a person who has lost loved ones, for every cry of pain from an injured person, for the sorrow of every raped woman, and for every tear of an orphan, if those who criticize me could only know how many times the shoes that I have thrown stepped over the rubble of homes demolished by the occupation, how many times they were covered by the blood of injured innocent people, and how many times they stepped into a home that was violated by soldiers of the occupation. Perhaps throwing the shoes was an appropriate response considering all these violations.
This is how Muntadhar al-Zaidi described the famous incident when he threw his shoes at former President George W. Bush's face during a joint press conference with with Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki in Baghdad. At the time, Bush made his goodbye visit to Iraq in December 2008, just before his term in office was about to be over. News leaks about the torture of Muntadhar al-Zaidi were denied by the government at the time, but today al-Zaidi confirmed that he was tortured.
I was subjected to the worst forms of torture. Electric shocks and beatings with metal cables and iron bars, even in the back room where the joint press conference was taking place and where I could hear the voices of people at the conference. Perhaps they heard my screams as well.
The Iraqi government had sentenced Muntadhar al-Zaidi to 3 years in prison for attacking a visiting president, but the sentence was later reduced to 1 year. Due to good behavior inside the prison, al-Zaidi was released after only 9 months of imprisonment. His family members have been celebrating since the night before last because he was supposed to be released yesterday. But his release was postponed because the judge had ordered additional documents before al-Zaidi was to be released. Some Iraqis believe that the government was wrong by sentencing him to prison because he expressed their feelings when he threw his shoes at Bush.
I think what Zaidi did is clearly an expression for the Iraqi people's rejection of Bush's visit.
The incidents have stirred official and public reactions inside Iraq and abroad. Those who oppose the policies of former President Bush have held demonstrations in many countries throughout the world, demanding freedom for al-Zaidi, who in their eyes not only express the feelings of Iraqis, but also many others who share his feelings.
However, the question remains, are the effects of throwing a shoe equivalent to those of occupying a country?
Muntadhar al-Zaidi's release was postponed for 1 day to complete some legal procedures. Al-Zaidi has decided to travel to Greece for medical assistance.
Muntadhar al-Zaidi's family and colleagues, as well as some parliament members who support his cause, joined the hero's welcome that he received upon his release. Al-Zaidi, who threw his shoes at former U.S. President George Bush, said that he was tortured right after the incident. He said that the journalists who attended the press conference during Bush's last visit to Baghdad may have heard his screams when he was being tortured, which went on for days. In the press conference that al-Zaidi held at Baghdadiya television, he demanded an apology from Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki. He accused the Prime Minister of concealing the truth.
The Iraqi Prime Minister appeared on satellite TV and said that he could not sleep until he was assured that I had a bed and sufficient blankets in prison. But during these exact moments as he was speaking, I was being tortured with the ugliest methods of torture: electric shocks, beatings with metal cables and iron bars.
Al-Zaidi expressed his fear of being pursued or killed and talked about the reasons why he threw his shoes at Bush.
What made me confront Bush was the injustice afflicted on our people. The occupation army wanted to subjugate my country, the Iraqi people, women, men, children, and seniors.
A large part of the Iraqi public welcomed al-Zaidi's release and considered his actions patriotic.
We are truly happy that Muntadhar al-Zaidi has been released from prison. What he did was a noble act. He is an honorable Iraqi citizen.
I would have done the same. God willing, he will be okay.
He is a symbol for all Iraqis. If we were to look inside of every Iraqi, we would find that all of us want to do what Muntadhar al-Zaidi did.
Millions of TV audiences around the world watched al-Zaidi throw his shoes at Bush on December 14, 2008, saying it was a goodbye kiss to the former U.S. president. Zaidi, nicknamed the shoe thrower, was tried and sentenced to 3 years in jail for assaulting the president, but the sentence was reduced to 1 year soon afterwards. Despite the apology that al-Zaidi made at the end of the press conference to his colleagues for causing them trouble, there are still mixed opinions about the incident. Some consider al-Zaidi a national hero, while others think that his behavior showed disrespect for the guest. Hassan Al-Houri, BBC.
In part of the ongoing attacks on Iraqi journalists, the crew of Al-Iraqiya was assaulted today by the preventive forces of the Baghdad Provincial Council.
Members of the Baghdad Preventative Forces brutally assaulted 10 crew members from the Al-Iraqiya channel after cutting off the road leading to the station's headquarters. The officers forced the crew out of their cars and assaulted them using their hands and batons, as well as the barrels of their guns. The victims suffered bruises and injuries.
We came under attack by members of the preventative forces of the Baghdad Provincial Council. They treated us as if we were suicide bombers or terrorists who infiltrated the country. We have never embezzled, taken bribes, or acted against the country's national security. On the contrary, we have always worked hard to uphold national interests.
Al-Iraqiya channel and its correspondents have always worked hard to expose the terrorists, and some were martyred in the process. The terrorists tried hard to silence the voices of Iraq, but they failed. Today, Al-Iraqiya came under attack by members of the preventive forces of the Baghdad Provincial Council. Al-Iraqiya correspondent Haider al-Shakur was brutally assaulted and sustained bruises and injuries to his face and body.
They beat us up with their hands and feet. They pointed their guns at the face of a female colleague. Her name is Hiba. Look at what they have done to me. Is this the type of protection we deserve? We hold the Baghdad Provincial Council responsible.
3 teams from Al-Iraqiya channel and the Republic of Iraq TV were on their way to cover a political event inside the headquarters of the Iraqi parliament and the Prime Minister's office when they were intercepted by the preventive forces of the Baghdad Provincial Council. The officers used guns and batons to push back the journalists. They brutally assaulted and arrested some of the journalists.
They attacked the camera crew. They also assaulted the journalists, including correspondents Haider and Gaith from Al-Iraqiya. They beat them nearly to death. They struck them with the barrels of their guns. They went after us. We've done nothing wrong. We hold the preventative forces of the Provincial Council responsible. One of the officers came out of his car and pointed his gun at me. I told him I work for an Iraqi channel, and I dared him to hit me. They beat the journalist nearly to death. There were 8 of us. They pulled Haider inside the council offices and beat him badly. They claimed that we were blocking the street.
Were they members of the preventive forces or members of a boxing team? We are part of Al-Iraqiya channel, which is a well-known media outlet. They use their weapons and hands to beat us.
Al-Iraqiya is a state-run television station which makes it more immune to attacks by the preventive security forces. However, today's incident has put Al-Iraqiya in the same category as others who are often treated more harshly.
It's ironic to see an employee from Al-Iraqiya channel, which is a state-run channel, being attacked and humiliated at the entrance to the local government headquarters in the province of Baghdad.
We demand the Iraqi government and the Council of Ministers launch an investigation into this case and other cases of media abuse. We call on them to draft a law, as there are no current laws to protect the media.
In light of the blatant attack by the preventive forces of the Baghdad Provincial Council, Al-Iraqiya channel filed a grievance with the head of the Security Committee of the Provincial Council. However, the council responded with more warnings against Al-Iraqiya television channel, which is trying to show the truth. It seems that the council is trying to shelter the perpetrators who inflicted irreparable harm on their victims. Al-Iraqiya correspondents have often come under repeated attacks, with some being downplayed by government and security institutions. Most of the isolated incidents are often hidden away in the cabinets of government institutions. This comes despite the fact that Iraq is a nation known to uphold justice, reason, and integrity. However, what happened today requires the government, the parliament, and the judiciary system to take unified action to protect journalists against the madness of some members of the preventive and security institutions.
يشكل شهر رمضان المبارك مناسبة تجتمع خلاله العوائل المغربية.
The holy month of Ramadan is an occasion where Moroccan families gather around dinner tables that are full of special Ramadan dishes. This scene shows how much Moroccans value visiting relatives and staying close with one another, especially during the last 10 days of Ramadan when they hold Quran reading sessions at night.
The Moroccans keep an old tradition of families gathering together for iftar or fast-breaking dinners. This tradition stems from its religious roots. In order to revive the tradition of family bonding, parents, children, and grandchildren, also known as the extended family, all gather around the iftar table. Sometimes neighbors and friends join in iftar dinners as well.
We consider maintaining family bonds a religious obligation, especially during the holy month of Ramadan, the month of kindness and fear of God, in addition to reviving family bonds and relationships.
The housewives attentively decorate the iftar tables with the most delicious and appetizing dishes and sweets, especially the renowned Shubaykiya or al-Mikhraq that adorn the tables with pastries and pies. The soup or harira that is put in the center of these dishes is still the main dish and most favored by Moroccans at the iftar table.
The Moroccan Ramadan iftar tables are characterized by variety. People who fast begin iftar by eating dates and drinking milk, following in the footsteps of the Prophet, may peace and prayers be upon him. Soup is considered a basic material for iftar, and also shubak yalli, which is considered to be one of the original Moroccan traditions.
When the last 10 days of Ramadan begin, the housewives prepare traditional Moroccan couscous, which will be presented as the main dish at dinner after Taraweeh prayers. While some families prefer the fez couscous, which is prepared with garbanzo beans and raisins, some others choose the vegetarian couscous, also known as 7-vegetable couscous. Couscous is also offered to the guests who are invited to attend the family Quran readings that are held during these blessed days in the evenings.
Holding the family Quran reading in the evening after the Taraweeh prayers came from Moroccans' desires to make Ramadan nights divine and spiritual nights.
Usually, the Quran readings last until late at night, during which pots of Moroccan tea are served. The family gathering during the holy month of Ramadan at the iftar or dinner table is an old tradition that Moroccans have kept in order to revive the family bonds and celebrate Ramadan nights with a divine and sacred atmosphere.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.